What is going on, everybody? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock, presented by DraftKings Pick 6. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist over on X. Simple enough there. I have no Gregory Ehrenberg here yet. Waiting for Greg Ehrenberg to come join the program here. Hopefully everything's okay on his end. I've never seen him late for a show, not on time for a show, so I don't know what to make of this, but I got producer Jacob Roach here alongside, riding sidecar with me. That makes it a little bit easier for me. If you don't know him, he literally has been producing Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks for, 2 years, 2.5 years? What a lucky fellow. That is for sure. But we are here to talk NBA DFS, of course. That is not going to be the betting streets, although Odd Chopper, you can go follow that for all of your betting needs. We've got game 2 of my Minnesota Timberwolves hosting the Dallas Mavericks, 5-point dogs here. And we're just going to start it up here. Producer Jacob, if you want to jump over on playback, we can post that over into the chat here on YouTube as well. But I think we should just post the Sims tool here, run some Sims, and help the people out as we start to break this one down, because I think this is a really, really fascinating showdown slate for a lot of reasons. First off, my Minnesota Timberwolves, this line has now moved, a full point here going this direction. I hope. Oh, we got Greg coming in here in 2 seconds, which will be great. But I'm hoping my Minnesota Timberwolves can right the ship a little bit. But Jaden McDaniels had the game of all games, and we still couldn't find a W there. Anthony Edwards fell a little bit by the wayside. But as I was working through ownership this morning, I was a little bit surprised to see such flat ownership here amongst these top 4 captain selections. We've got Luka, we've got Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and then Rudy Gobert. I think all 4 of them here with the captain in double digits. I gotta say, it's difficult for me to really say anything other than I should be jamming Luka Doncic in this type of situation. I think Luka is at 21% a little bit under-owned in relative to his chances of being optimal in this spot. And as I start to build through my lineups here, I'm playing my typical 40 lineups here. I feel as though Luka is going to just be a large stand for me. I mean, the Mavericks, if they have an opportunity to go for the jugular tonight, I think Luka's the guy I really want to take along for the ride. Now, we'll get to the utility. We'll get to a couple of these flex options that we have here as well. But obviously, the Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively thing is a fascinating talking point, something that I started working through a little bit this morning. And I got to say, because of how much Derek Lively I'm going to be firing off here today, it is not that hard for me to be landing on as much Luka Doncic as I humanly possibly want here. 8,100 for him. Derek Lively there at the captain spot. Going to be somebody I'm trying to get overweight to as well. We could eventually see 30, 32 minutes for him at some point this series. But in terms of the captain, I don't know how you see 20, 25% Luka and not absolutely love it. I mean, we've seen him well north of that on single game slates here. I project him well north of Anthony Edwards, as we do here at Stochastic. Nearly 10. Yes, 10 fantasy point difference between the two of them there. So as I look at it at the top, it makes it pretty darn nifty. I'm playing 44% Hardy. Oh, we'll talk about some Jaden Hardy here in our lives. That is going to be wild for sure. Eric Lindquist loves Luka, hates Ant. That is not true, NY Steagle J. But anywho, as I turn over things to our host, Ehrenberg DFS over on X. How you doing, my dude?
Turning this on. Can you hear me? It is.
I can hear you. Here. Why don't you tell the people what you're up to? You having some fun?
There's a bat trapped upstairs in my house right now. There's a bat trapped upstairs in my house. I was with my brother. We're trying to catch this bat that's flying around upstairs and completely lost track of time. But yeah, it is enclosed upstairs right now. Situation to be determined. It is not the first time a bat has gotten in upstairs. It was supposed to be sealed off. I do not know how they got into the house again, but there's a bat upstairs.
Either die here or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Oh yeah, Batman. Oh, great.
This might be the Batman origin story in real life.
So good.
If I don't bink a GPP today.
Oh my Lord. All right. We're ready to rock though. How you doing? Other than that.
Doing okay. I don't know how my baseball lineups are doing right now, but neither here nor there. Let's talk about some NBA DFS right now. First off, Eric, what have you what pertinent points have you covered to this point?
Just literally started going through the captains. I think 21.7% Luka Doncic is a little bit abhorrent. I've got 40% of him in the captain right now. We have a 10 fantasy point difference between Luka and Anthony Edwards today. I have enough of cheap options, mid-range options between Naz Reid, between Derek Lively, that Luka at the captain going to be my highest owned by a pretty considerable margin.
Not as popular today as he was the other day also,
Correct.
where we had him projected for a bunch of ownership, which I think part of it, and it's not to say that it's not like he's clearly not contrarian at the captain spot, just not as popular as he was projected to be the other day. I do wonder too, if you think about on some of these recent slates, we haven't seen the expensive players be the nuts. Like we've had games 1 and games 2 of the Pacers Celtics series. Jason Tatum was not just not in the cap, wasn't in the winning lineup at all in either of those 2 slates. I do wonder if that is something that's kind of dictating what the field wants to do with this kind of slate. But the other part of this that I want to ask you too, I was dead wrong the other day. I thought we were going to see Dallas go small ball to end up closing out the game. But part of the reason was because I thought there was a good chance they were going to be trailing, but our Minnesota Timberwolves didn't quite come through for us the other day in the way that we would have hoped. What do you think the closing lineup is if Dallas is trailing in this game? Do they go with Lively? Do they go with Gafford? Or could it be Josh Green or Tim Hardaway Jr. on the court?
So I'm feeling pretty confident about Derek Lively minutes. This is something that I posted earlier today over on X, and I'm not sure if anybody saw it, and I don't know if anybody cares about me. It's fine. It is what it is. But I am shocked by the fact that Derek Lively has been exponentially better than any other Dallas Maverick throughout these entire playoffs. He has a 116.6 offensive rating, a 100.5 defensive rating. He has a 16 net rating, which is just drastically better than Kyrie, PJ Washington, Luka, who are all half of that. Derek Lively, for all intents and purposes, not that he's the best player on the floor. I think we can all agree Luka, Kyrie, they're pretty special, but Derek Lively has been a huge part of this Dallas Mavericks run. And I don't see very many scenarios where they don't close with him anymore. I think he's just been that kind of a player, Greg.
Yeah, even if they're trailing, no scenario where it's not Lively on the court at the end.
I mean, you could see Tim Hardaway Jr. as like a chuck and pray type guy if they're down 10, down 8. But if the game is within 5, within 6, I think they keep Derek Lively because Gobert, Cat, Naz, 2 of the 3 are going to be on the floor barring foul trouble at all times.
Yeah, one thing that's also kind of hard about this, we haven't seen Dallas trailing in playoff games really at all this year to know what it is that they would potentially do. Like, I'm looking through the games that they last lost in the playoffs, like game 4 against OKC. They were winning that entire game and then just got trashed in the 4th quarter of that game. So how far back do we have to go to find a game where Dallas was substantially trailing in the playoffs?
Let me pull that up here.
Game 1 against OKC.
Mm-hmm.
So here's something of note. There's only
Clippers,
been
they lost that one. Yeah, game 4
1
it was for the Clippers.
So game 1 against OKC. This is the last time we actually saw Dallas trailing in the second half. They played Derek Lively 13 minutes and Josh Green 25 minutes. For what it's
wild. I don't disagree with you where it wouldn't be some Josh Green getting extra run. But I repeat, Derek Lively, that's one of the reasons that they've been up in some of these games. I mean, I was a little bit shocked. I had a friend of mine that had pointed it out before game 1 and then game 2 today. It keeps getting wider. The spread between Derek Lively and Kyrie, or the spread between him and every other player on the Mavericks in terms of net rating, it's wild how good he's been. And when you have Gobert, Cat out on the floor, yeah, it's going to be one of those spots where maybe they want Josh Green to try to get some shooting. They go to PJ Washington at the 5. I don't really think they can do that in this matchup at any points. I know the Clippers, I go back to this game a long time ago. It was like February or March, but I remember when they went extreme small ball against Gobert and Cat with Kawhi at the 5, and it was one of the weirder things that I've ever seen. I was just like watching the game live as it was going down, or I guess you could call it, I mean, it was like PJ Washington, or not PJ Washington, but they ended up having Paul George, Kawhi. It was just like one of the weirder closing lineups. Russell Westbrook was in that closing lineup. I don't think it's going to be all that effective. And so, I don't know. I think Derek Lively still, even in like a 5-6 point game, unless it gets to like 10-12 where they really try to get 3-point shooting out there or try to go super small ball to stretch it, foul Rudy Gobert a bunch. I don't think there's a lot of ways where they go to that for the closing lineup in this matchup.
So with that in mind, if it's not Josh Green, where do you want to go contrarian for today? Is it leaving salary on the table? You mentioned you like Luka at the captain. Maybe there is a contrarian you captain that you like as well. But what's the angle to get different on this slate where we could build lineups that are not duped by the field as much?
PJ Washington. I hate it. PJ Washington's like 15% owned in the utility. He's 1.8% owned in the captain. I'm double the field on both of those at least. I had 45% in my last run. It came down to 40% here in the last one, but I have a lot of PJ Washington. I wish I had less PJ Washington, Greg. I would really, really, really like to not have this much PJ Washington, but he's playing so many minutes. And when you get a piece that's this low owned, who's guaranteed to be playing a lot of minutes like PJ Washington is, I'm not saying that he's going to go out and set the world on fire like we saw in a couple of those Oklahoma City games, but he's definitely the guy that, considering you see him with Gobert, Towns, Irving, Edwards, and Doncic above him, only 6 players more expensive than him. I think PJ Washington's somebody to be overweight to on this slate, and it makes me sick.
Yeah, so PJ Washington, like you said, we've got him projected for, right around 10% ownership, so not going to be all that popular, at least not projected to be all that popular. And this was the guy who was all the rage not all that long ago. If you remember, we just had PJ Washington on classic slates, not even one game slates. We had like 2-3 game slates where PJ Washington was 50% owned. And I had people telling me on Twitter where I had said, like, is Kyrie Irving one of the best number 2 options in NBA history? I was thinking the other day, he just plays this like second fiddle role really, really well, where if he's going to be the number 1 guy in your offense, it's not the ideal role for him. But if he's going to be a secondary scorer, he's as good as it gets in that role. And I had people telling me last round that no, PJ Washington's actually the second best player on the Dallas Mavericks, not Kyrie Irving. And then a couple bad games from PJ Washington. Now nobody's playing him. I agree with you. I'm looking at my lineups right here. I have, about 25% of PJ Washington in the flex. I even have a couple of lineups with him in the captain spot as well. Not a significant amount, just a couple. But I agree with you. I think he's a reasonable way to differentiate some lineups.
Yeah, it's like the guy from Men in Black at the beginning when the alien, more with the sugar with water. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That makes me happy.
Yeah. He looks a little bit like Jordan. If that guy was Asian, he'd be Jordan Klein, right?
Yeah. He's not even like Jordan Klein is drinking Mai Tais, not giving a fuck right now. So I guess it's okay.
Instead of sugar water, he's just
sugar.
He's putting Zins back
with water.
And he also doesn't wear sleeves. He's Jordan Klein. He's Jordan Klein in real life. Edgar. Yeah, that's a comment got in the chat. Says it was Edgar. Yeah, it was that was his name.
I know that whole movie verbatim. I still didn't know his name. That's funny.
I knew it at one point. It's been so long since I saw Men in Black. But anyway, nuke of the night, Eric. I don't know if you're going to go PJ Washington. I don't know if you're going to go somewhere else. But for you tonight, who is the nuke of the night?
Can it be position specific? Because I feel like Captain Luka is the nuke of the night. I was pretty high on Kyrie. It ended up being Jaden McDaniels and a couple of other like weirdos that, ended up playing all right there. Mike Conley, I do have some bets on a ladder. Kind of got it rising from 10 with 2 threes, 15 with 3 threes. I didn't go 20 with 4 or 5. I decided to opt out of that one, but I've got my Mike Conley exposure there. I really like Luka when he's sitting at 20-25% here in the captain. It's really hard not to look at that number where we have him projected more than 10 fantasy points higher than Anthony Edwards and not look at that and say, Luka Doncic, who's looked healthier and playing 40 plus minutes in every single matchup and fills up a box score. And I think I'll just get different by playing tons of Derek Lively. Derek Lively would be like my utility nuke of the night. I've got him in over 60% of my lineups right now, but I'm going to go Luka captain. I've currently got him in more than double what the field does.
All right, Eric's going really bold with Luka at captain.
Shut up.
In your defense here, a lot of the chat I did see was saying that Luka's a terrible captain choice today. So I know that chat wasn't super fond of Luka in that.
That's what I'm here for.
Spot.
That's what I'm here for.
Me looking to go, I'll go a little bit more off the board than saying Luka in the multiplier.
Easy, okay? Yeah, go
Kyrie
deal
in the
with your
multiplier
bat.
spot.
Go deal with your bat.
I wish I could. I wish I could. I don't know what the solution is. Apparently, also, bat shit is extremely poisonous.
It is. It's not good for you. You need to get that thing out of there.
Yeah, I've been told that I shouldn't be eating it. But anyway, if we look in the multiplier spot, Kyrie Irving, where there's clearly a ceiling in Kyrie. It looked like last game we were on track to have Kyrie Irving be the highest scoring player in the game. He had a ridiculous first half off the top of my head. What was it? 24 points he had at the end of the half. Part of it was because the Timberwolves gave him some easy buckets towards the tail end of the first half where we saw him. I think he hit a bucket and then Anthony Edwards had like a poor turnover and then Kyrie Irving had a 3-point play right after that to close out the half. But there's for sure situations where when Dallas needs Kyrie to score, he steps up and he's able to carry a higher usage load. He doesn't always play the second fiddle to Luka Doncic, and he's really good at picking his spots. There are times where Kyrie recognizes, hey, Luka doesn't have his A game today. I'm going to have a higher assist rate, or he's going to have a higher usage rate, or he'll say, I need to be a distributor today. I could go ahead and I could play more of a point guard role. But just because there is that upside on Kyrie, and we only have him projected for about 6% ownership in the captain spot. So we've got, of all the players that are like the high fantasy upside guys in this game, Luka around 20% owned in the captain spot. Anthony Edwards around 20% owned in the captain spot. Double-digit ownership to both Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert in the captain spot. Of the players that have a real legitimate upside, the only one that isn't getting ownership is Kyrie Irving. That's why I like to go to him to get different in the captain spot, Eric.
Don't mind it at all. He was my nuke in the captain spot last game, and unfortunately, I didn't bet enough of his props. I had enough Nas Reed that my life was just fine. I ended up making a lot of money on that first game from a prop perspective. From a DFS perspective, was pretty flat, but I am with you. Kyrie Irving, he was always going to be a key to this series. I have a ton of him in the utility, not as much in the captain here today, so I'll have plenty of Kyrie. I think that he's somebody that maybe I'll give a little bit of a boost to here, considering, I mean, I do have some pretty strong fades. I know that we're, 11 minutes away from lock here, so I'll at least throw it out there. I really have no Daniel Gafford exposure today. I think he's a pretty bad play. I think we're eventually going to see like a 30-18 split. I think that's very, very live to happen sooner rather than later. He's been terrible for all intents and purposes for what I thought relative to what his actual stats are, because he's been a decent rim protector. That's something Josh and I talked about. Well, that's kind of gone away. The shine is worn off, if you will. We've got Daniel Gafford with like a 103 offensive rating. He's been terrible relative to Josh Green on the floor, Derek Jones Jr. on the floor, obviously the key three starters in Kyrie, Doncic, and PJ Washington on the floor. I think Gafford is going to be shorter for this series than what you think, unless we get major foul trouble for Lively or PJ Washington.
And by the way, if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to Chris Williams, who gifted out not 5, but 10 YouTube memberships to people out. So Chris, as always, appreciate you for supporting the channel. And about 10 minutes from now, what's going to happen is the show is going to be starting over on Playback. And it's going to be Ben Raza jumping on with me. We'll be watching the game and potentially getting some bat updates from my brother. What we did, I'll tell you what we did end up doing. We closed all the doors and we put our Ring camera up there so we could monitor to see where it is that it's coming in and out of. So maybe that will help us a little bit here. We got a super chat from Darren Unger, who is asking a 2v2 question for FanDuel. He wants to know, it's also kind of, I don't know which multiplier spots you're putting people in, but he had said for FanDuel, Kyrie and Gobert, or Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. So I assume this is for these guys in the pro and the star spots. Let's see what the ownership is over there for FanDuel. Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I am making the assumption this is for your star and your pro spots.
Yeah, it'd be the second one.
Well, you've gone with the most popular options possible, which I'm a little nervous about because I'm going to make an assumption that he played Luka in the MVP spot. And I am almost positive that Darren is playing one of the most, is choosing between like the first and second most possible Duke lineups. My gut feeling is that both of these are bad lineups, but that aside,
not ideal.
Kyrie and Gobert or Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. All right. Can we get him any kind of Relief of owner. Okay, so Kyrie and Gobert, I'm almost positive I know what lineup you're building. That lineup is going to be played by like 10% of the field if you're going with the first lineup. So I'm going to say the second lineup.
That is correct.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. If you're playing the lineup, I think you are. When I was running stuff through the contest generator before, no lie, that the contest on FanDuel, the main one has 11,000 entries. And I think like 500 of those 11,000 people are playing the combination you're considering in one with the other 3 players that are in it. So make sure if you are playing Luka, this goes for everybody. If you're playing Luka in the MVP spot on FanDuel, either leave a good amount of salary on the table or play somebody who's projected for very low ownership in the star and the pro spots, or you're just guaranteed to be playing a bad lineup there. But Correct. One other question here related to the MVP. What would you be doing with the MVP spot on FanDuel, Eric? Are you just going to Luka and leaving salary on the table? Are you going to somebody other than Luka? What is your ideal way to play it? Luka is going to be in, 70% of the field's lineups in the MVP spot.
I think I would be trying to get to Ant a little bit more. MVP ownership, 27.5%. We're talking about an 8 fantasy point disparity, so a little bit less than what we're getting over on DraftKings. You don't get the 3-point bonus. You don't get the double-double or triple-double bonus. You don't get a boost for threes. And so I think getting to a little bit more Ant would make some sense in that MVP spot. As far as the star goes, I think you got some options. I mean, if you're going to play Luka in the MVP and you're trying to get different and not play Ant, who would obviously be second in line there, I like the idea of getting to Kyrie Irving and maybe having like a 4-1 Dallas. I like getting to Karl Anthony Towns potentially and, having the 13K guys skipping Ant and Kyrie. Sometimes when you get the public money, they'll just click next to available in the star. I'm probably looking at getting to a little bit more Ant in the MVP though. And then in the star would be looking to skip Ant and Kyrie, trying to get to more Cat and Gobert.
Got one more. Well, actually, there's no question with this super chat. Oh, here it is. Okay. Michael Surwa has left us a super chat. He wants to know, who do we like for 7K or under over on FanDuel? So our options, like our realistic options for under 7K on FanDuel are, we've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker is right at 7K. Josh Green is 7K. Tim Hardaway Jr. is 6,500. And Jaden Hardy is 6,500. There's nobody else I would really consider this cheap of a price point. I'm going to tell you the guy to go with is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Here's something that's been happening lately. NAW cannot hit shit. I don't remember. When's the last time he made a 3, Eric? Like, not even exaggerating. It's been like, 2 weeks?
1947. It was a cold winter.
Yeah, it's what's the Yellowstone prequel?
Yep. So that's one my wife worked on, Paramount Plus, 1920, whatever the fuck. I can't remember. I'm a very supportive husband.
Yeah, that's about the time Nickeil Alexander
1923
made his last 3.
1923.
So as a result, what do the Minnesota Timberwolves do last game? NAW isn't making his shots. Kyle Anderson's playing pretty well. All of a sudden, NAW loses playing time. Kyle Anderson picks up more playing time. Now, over on FanDuel, Kyle Anderson, $7,500 isn't all that popular. He's very popular over on DraftKings. I don't think Kyle Anderson has to play the same minutes he played last game. If NAW is making his shots, the entire playoffs, Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been playing more minutes than Kyle Anderson. They made that pivot last game. I don't think that has to be the case for today. If Nickeil Alexander-Walker makes one of the first couple shots he takes, I think he gets most of his minutes back. I think he's a very reasonable contrarian play for today. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker on also the options are very thin for 7K and under. Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 7K.
I'm with you. Yeah, Nickeil Alexander-Walker on FanDuel. I don't have a lot on DK for what it's worth. I have him for 20 minutes. I think it's just what you said. I mean, he hasn't made any shots. Hopefully he can knock down shots as a fan. From a DFS perspective, though, it's pretty thin. But yeah, 13.9% ownership. That's pretty darn low. 0.9% between the pro and star? No chance he'd probably show up in any of those. But for a utility option, I think he's pretty decent.
What are the other players that you're getting overweight to? Just a few minutes left to go. So who are the other contrarian players that you ended up getting to in your lineups outside of PJ Washington? Are you getting yourself to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, maybe Derek Jones Jr.? Any other ways that you're looking at to get to players who are maybe like, 20% owned that you might want 30+% of.
Yeah, Jaden Hardy's at 9%. I have 20%. Tim Hardaway Jr. is at 6%. I'm at 24%. For me, it's like Tim Hardaway Jr. is probably dead. Like those lineups are very, very dead in a lot of ways, but there are ways that they trail, and Tim Hardaway Jr. knocks down shots. Same thing as Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and they utilize him. Maybe Luka or Kyrie find themselves in foul trouble. You run into Tim Hardaway Jr. Probably going to be Jaden Hardy. Actually, in the last second here, I'm going to swap a couple of those into more Jaden Hardy because he's, I don't know.
One thing
more
real
in
quick,
favor.
We did get a question in Discord, which is Einstein asked, any chance Tim Hardaway Jr. plays ahead of Hardy tonight? He did last game.
He literally
last
just
game,
did.
Tim Hardaway Jr. played 10.5 minutes. Hardy played 9. So we got 1.5 more minutes out of Hardaway. And that was with Hardy playing like as good as he could possibly play.
But with Hardy at 2,200 and Tim Hardaway Jr. at 2,400, I will say, I think there's a pretty good chance that we get some artificial ownership going in towards Jaden Hardy. I just want to throw that out there. It's happened every slate that I've said that about somebody. I think Jaden Hardy ends up closer to 20%, and I think Tim Hardaway Jr. shows up closer to 5%.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. So Tim Hardaway, by the way, Tim Hardaway Jr. didn't even take a shot last game. He played 10.5 minutes, 4 rebounds, 1 steal. The peripheral stats were there. He just didn't shoot the ball at all during the time that he was out there. So if they're trailing, I do think that Josh Green's probably a little bit more. I mean, with this conversation last time, I think Josh Green would be a little bit more likely to be on the court instead of Tim Hardaway Jr. But, I mean, it's been weird. There has not been games that the Dallas Mavericks have really trailed in the postseason. They've either gotten blown out where it hasn't mattered, or they've been leading and then they blow the lead late. So we don't really know what the game script looks like for this team's rotation, should they be leading late. But finally, Eric, before we head on over to playback and the weekend starts, who's going to ruin you today? Who are you underweight to the field to that you are very nervous could ruin your lineups by not having them?
Got to be Nickeil Alexander-Walker on DK, and Daniel Gafford I have 0% of in captain or utility out of 40 lineups. So Daniel Gafford, congratulations, you just doubled.
Kyle Anderson for me. I have 20% of Kyle Anderson. He's projected for around 40% ownership. So underweight to Kyle Anderson. The guy that both of us were not on yesterday was Obi Toppin, and Toppin sucked, and he was crazy popular. So honestly, if you just didn't play Toppin yesterday, you were probably profitable. That was kind of like the only stand you had to make. Like Toppin and Tatum. If you didn't have Toppin or Tatum, you probably had a pretty good lineup yesterday. But let's see what the good lineups look like today. Guys, over here on YouTube, like and subscribe if you haven't already. And join us in playback. If you wouldn't mind, Jacob, drop that playback link into the chat. Myself and Ben Raza, we're about to watch the first half of the game over there. And hopefully, Minnesota Timberwolves could even the series at 1, because I think they're in some trouble if they're not able to do it. So go join us in playback. Let's go ahead and watch the show, sweat out the game. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you are leaving us, have a great weekend. But let's head on over to playback.